Welcome back to the first digital edition of the International Product Safety Week event. Really good to have you back, and as you know, you can send us your questions via Slido on the right of your screen. We didn't get many questions in the last session, so I want to see more activity on Slido. Do remember to include your name and your organisation when posting questions, and please keep the questions concise. So we really do want to hear from you. We are going to be asking you a lot of questions during this session, so you need to get ready to answer those. We're talking about tracing and tracking products. We're talking about raising the bar for traceability. There are lots of good examples of good product traceability practices out there, but there are many products that simply are not safe, and market surveillance authorities just can't trace their origin. And of course, that means then that it's hard to know if that product is being sold elsewhere. So it's a really big issue. So in this session, we're going to take stock of existing traceability requirements, and then also examine the challenges and look at some good practices from all around the globe again. I think that's what's so great. We can really hear from so many different countries. So before I introduce my panellists, I want to introduce our keynote speaker to kick off this session. Marianne Walsmann is a German member of the European Parliament. She is a member of the Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection and a rapporteur for the draft report on addressing product safety in the single market. So let's hear now from Marianne Walsmann.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and a real honor to have the possibility to send you this video message for the second panel today. I would have loved to participate at this panel, but due to other obligations, this was unfortunately not possible. I cannot thank you enough for organizing a conference on the International Product Safety Week. Product safety for the millions of products traded within the single market is key, since consumers' health has to be protected. Being the rapporteur on product safety in the European Parliament, I cannot highlight enough that greater efforts are needed to improve the safety of products and to ensure a high level of consumer protection. Existing product safety rules need to be evaluated and adapted to take account of the digital transformation. Adjustments are needed to take due account of products embedding emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. The existing legal gaps have to be closed, and at the same time, over-regulation and bureaucracy has to be avoided. I am convinced that we need strong safety rules for the products sold in the EU. Does not matter if they are sold online or offline or produced in or outside of the EU. Therefore, I am suggesting firstly to enhance the effectiveness of the market surveillance, secondly to increase the responsibility of the online marketplaces, thirdly to improve the effectiveness of recalls, and last but not least to improve the traceability of a product along the supply chain. That is why I welcome very much the topic of the second panel. We need reliable information on the supply chain for the enforcement of product safety provisions. If unsafe products are detected, it is important to trace back the manufacturer, importer, distributor, and so on, in order to know where the product is available and make sure that all dangerous items are withdrawn from the market. In my report, I asked the Commission to update the rules for the traceability requirements of non-harmonized products and to evaluate how to distribute ledger technology such as blockchain could enhance the safety of products by improving product traceability throughout the supply chain. I would be interested in your point of view on that. Since traceability is a complex issue, the discussions in this panel today will be very valuable for the work on the revision on the General Product Safety Directive. I wish you an interesting second panel and would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed. So the panel that I'm going to introduce in a moment has got some work ahead because they're going to be some of their ideas probably to feed into the General Product Safety Directive review. So an interesting job for them, if you like. Pinuccia, are you with us? Because Pinuccia is going to be with us, I think, on this session to give us some sense of what the main challenges are in traceability. Because it's a difficult one, isn't it, with complex supply chains?
That's for sure. But don't worry, I will not be the sixth panelist. I'm just here now to introduce very, very quickly why traceability is so important. Because if we have a dangerous product in our hands, how do we contact the manufacturer? How do we know about the supply chain, where it was produced? Who shall we contact to have more information, to know what's wrong about this product, or to inform those who have contributed to producing the product that there is something dangerous in it? So this is in a nutshell the problem. And as you were saying, Kathy, supply chains have become global. So this is a global issue. And we need to make sure that we can trace correctly the product to differentiate it from similar others. And this generally goes through brands, names, batch numbers, code bars, and you name it. All sorts of systems can be put in place. And we definitely know that this is a big problem because, just to give an example, in the RAPEX China system, I know we have our friends from China with us in the panel. Lately, more than half of the products that have been identified as dangerous in the EU and were produced in China could not be traced up, in spite of the great cooperation we have with the Chinese authorities, because there was not enough information about the product. So this is really a challenge for us, and we are wondering whether we shouldn't do something in the revision of the General Product Safety Directive to better address this problem. So this is my question to you. How can we do this? And I will be very happy and looking forward to hearing your suggestions and best practices.
Thank you very much indeed, Pinuccia. So let me introduce our panel. So as you say, we're delighted to have Yongsong Wang from China, who is the Deputy Director General of the Bureau of Quality and Development of the State Administration for Market Regulation, basically the Chinese Safety Authority. Welcome to you. We have Monique Goyens, who is the Director General of BEOC. It's the umbrella group for 44 independent consumer organisations from 32 countries in and around Europe. So a very familiar face to European audiences, Monique. Lovely to see you. Francesca Poggiali is from GS1 in Europe, which is an NGO specialised in, amongst other things, traceability solutions. So, you know, you're on the right panel. We're delighted to have you with us. And Daniele Sartori, from an industry perspective, Quality and Compliance Director for the Italian manufacturer of childcare goods, Arzana Chico. And joining us from, where are you joining us from in Italy?
I'm close to Como, the northern part of Italy.
Probably locked down, unfortunately, at the moment, but lovely to see you. And Tim Lorenz is Managing Director of RIA, which is a German SME, won an EU Product Safety Award last year. You basically are making safety devices to prevent accidents at home. So very interesting product that you make in the context of what we're talking about. So welcome to you. Let me start with Mr. Wang, because we're very interested to hear what's happening in China. And I know you can't stay with us for the whole discussion, but how do you go about tracing products in China? Do give us some insight. And can I ask all of our panelists, please, we must keep our comments to 5 minutes or less, I'm afraid, because then we will have time for conversation and questions. So 5 minutes and less. Otherwise, I'm afraid might have to stop you. But we're delighted that you are with us, Mr. Wang. Can you hear us? I'm not sure whether you can hear us. We're happy.
Yeah.
Mr. Wang, do carry on and let us with your presentation.
Thank you, moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wang Yunsong from Sam, China. Now I'd like to introduce application of product tracing in recall in China. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to briefly introduce SAM. State Administration for Market Regulation is an authority directed under the State Council of the People's Republic of China and the ministry level, which is responsible for market supervision and administration. Bureau of Quality and Development is one of the inner organizations of SAM, product safety, supervision, mainly motor vehicle, and consumer products is one of its responsibilities, such as making policies and regulations, as well as the management of recall. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce practical application of product tracing in China. Regarding traceability, especially then of fundamental products such as food, pharmaceuticals, and edible agricultural products, relevant policies, regulations, and standards have been developed. From a central government down to local authorities, a traceability system has been actively built for these products. Relevant technology has been properly developed. Next slide, please. Okay. Traceability is a key element in recall management. Hence, we set about to establish product traceability bylaws, regulations, and standards include 1. Regulations such as interim administrative rules on the recall of consumer products, which encourage manufacturers and distributors to build a traceability system. 2. Standard. For example, manufacturer guide to product recall, which records the scope of recall and key characteristics of defective products, such as lot number, color, size, formula, and packaging should be stated as accurately and clearly as possible in the recall notice. And the requirements on traceability of toys, guidelines, and general rule of traceability system, traceability of consumer products. 3. To recall products, business need to submit to administrative authorities a recall plan in which the lot number and identification method should be explicitly stated. Last, carry out education for enterprise and consumers is another important work. We train business how to pinpoint defective products and notify corresponding consumers promptly. We educate consumers to find producers that should be recalled by their key characteristics and guide them decide whether or not a certain product should be recalled through internet and hold calls when the recall starts. We also conduct research on traceability technology with academics. The next slide, please. Okay. We also encountered some challenges, for example, 1, with different laws and regulations for various products. We need to unify the coding of a traceability system and further to realize the goal of interconnection and intercommunication among traceability systems. 2, lack of state regulations that governs traceability of consumer products during their life cycle, and we thought a unified and standardized traceability system cannot satisfy the need of sophisticated traceability system. 3, failure to regulate the traceability system does not have close connection with enterprise data management, which results in the lack of active engagement amongst the business. Last, with AI and IoT products and online marketplace, it is becoming more and more difficult to track and trace liable party, especially cross-border goods sold online. The next technologies and methods are yet to be developed to cope with this situation. Next slide, please. Okay. Strengthening international cooperation on traceability and consumer products is very important. And we suggest, firstly, working together to draw up international standards for traceability of consumer products and practice guidelines for business to follow. Secondly, organize international events or initiatives such as sharing of traceability technology and public activities targeting toward governments, enterprise, and consumers. Lastly, formulating voluntary international policy to propel further improvement around the laws and standards in all countries. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Wang. And maybe I could ask you just a question. If we don't have enough information on customers, it's then very difficult to trace products and if they're unsafe. How can we improve that situation?
One, regarding high risk durables such as baby products or electronics or electric appliance, we'll consider a legal solution which is to build a mandatory or voluntary register system. Two, besides, we will use big data and other technology to build a life cycle traceability system for consumer products. With enough information collected, we'll be able to track and trace products when they are found to be defective and then take proper actions. Thank you.
Mr. Wang, thank you very much indeed for being with us. I know you've got to leave us, but thank you. It was really nice to have that perspective from China. Before then, I carry on with the discussion. I've just got, I want to ask you a question on Slido. And the question is, which of the following information should be mandatory for all consumer products on the product, packaging or accompanying document? So which, in your view, which of the following information should be mandatory for all consumer products on the product, packaging or accompanying document? So would it be a type, batch or serial number, registered trade name or registered trademark, manufacturer's name, importer's name, name of the responsible person, postal address for contact? And you can have multiple answers. You don't have to just choose one of these, because if you only had to choose one, you would have a problem probably. So email address for contact is another one. So which of these elements absolutely should be mandatory for all consumer products on the product, packaging or accompanying document? And you can put different answers. So it's, at the moment, manufacturer's name is coming out as the number one, 83%. It's like watching the election result in Pennsylvania. 8, well, let's see whether it's actually the type, batch and serial number, the registered trade name, the manufacturer's name, and the importer's name, all very, very important from everybody's perspective. Maybe I can bring in Monique Goyens here from BEUC, because Monique, I'm sure that you have got some views on this. Just can you give us a sort of sense of what consumers expect, Monique, in terms of traceability?
Yes, I will try to do so. And thank you very much for giving me the possibility to provide a little bit of a consumer context when it comes to the role of traceability in an overall safety framework. Now let's have a reality check. What do consumers expect? When you and I go and order a product, be it in a shop or online, we just expect this product to be safe in all sectors: food, pharmaceuticals, textiles, cosmetics, toys, what have you. And we also, so we have this intuition that somebody has taken care of our safety and somebody has checked that product or that type of product at least. And we have the same intuition that somebody has taken care of our safety be it domestic products or be it imported products. Somebody has checked this somewhere at the border. This is the consumer intuition. And consumers expect this safety framework not only to be applicable offline in the shop, in the physical shops, but also online. However, against these intuitions and against this, let's say, reasonable expectations, what we see is that there are quite a lot of dangerous products still on the market. My members, I mean, our members, the consumer organizations in the countries detect quite a lot of dangerous products, and market surveillance authorities also do. And we know that all those reports only are the tip of the iceberg. And of course, as you said, I have been in this job for quite some time, and product safety is really an ongoing and a permanent need. You need to keep products safe, not only for the sake of safety, but also for the sake of the economy, because if consumers lose trust in what is being offered to them, they will stop buying, and that's bad for everybody, for the economy also. So if it's a permanent need, still there are new challenges, and that needs to be addressed. We have already mentioned it. Markets are global. More and more products are imported. Markets move online. More and more products are bought online and not offline. What we see is that authorities have reduced resources, not only, let's say, in value, but also they need much more different skills, because there are also connected products. So you need geeks in the market surveillance authorities. Not sure that all of them have that. And so to be very clear and summarizing it, GPSD is up for the General Product Safety Directive is up for review. And one of the provisions that certainly needs to be reviewed is traceability. There is a need for improved traceability, because it is what we see is that currently market surveillance authorities can really not always trace back the manufacturer of a product. And this is unacceptable from the perspective of the consumer. And where we have a particular concern, and I really believe that this is something that needs to be addressed, is we see that there is a lack of traceability of products that are sold directly to consumers via online market platforms, while the sellers are outside of the EU, for example, in China, but not only in China. And there that we have done a test, our members have done a test last year. 250 products have been sold and have been bought online on online marketplaces, and 2/3, so 66% of those products, were either non-compliant with safety legislation or even outright dangerous. And when we contacted the platforms, who are the only interface that consumers have when it comes to getting in touch with somebody who is responsible, they really were very reluctant. Most of them were very reluctant to engage, because they consider that they have no liability at all in the supply chain. They're just listing products. Or when they were willing to interact and to delist the product, those products reappeared a few days later under the name of a different seller. So this is a regulatory gap and an enforcement gap that needs to be filled.
Okay, Monique, just let me just ask another question of the audience. This is a question: should it be possible to have traceability information available via a QR code or in an electronic form only? So the answer is yes, no, or it depends, and then you will be able to put in your thoughts on that. But should it be possible to have traceability information available via QR code or in an electronic form only? Yes, no, or it depends. Let's see what your thoughts are on that. Or maybe there is.
Should I answer that question, or should we wait for the answer of the audience?
Well, I'm just waiting a little bit for this answer, but okay. I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm not sure there is a place where you can put anything other than yes or no. So it's going very much in favour, Monique, of yes, it should be possible to have the information just in electronic form. What's your thought about that, Monique? And how do you sort of balance the need for information and sustainability? Because obviously packaging, we want to limit, but then that means there's not as much room for information on packaging. So how do you balance those two things?
Well, I think this is, first of all, this is not the conflict between safety and sustainability is not the right, is wrong. Because in fact, indeed, there might be, when you have a QR code, there might be less packaging involved. However, having a QR code means that you need to have a smartphone and you need to have a cloud and a server. And that has also a sustainability cost or an environmental cost. So this is a wrong conflict. However, fundamentally, we believe that it is not acceptable to only have this type of information via a QR code. It has to be with the product. It has to be, because the consumer does, all consumers are not necessarily having a smartphone. You don't necessarily have a connectivity. And this should not be a condition for you to be safe.
It's interesting, though, because what we're seeing is 58% of people on the Slido poll say it should be possible to just have the electronic format. Does that surprise you?
This is a Slido bias because the people in this audience are all professionals, while I'm representing the consumer perspective here. And from my experience and from the feedback that we have from consumers, they really need the information close to the product that they use. And having an additional, manipulation with a QR code or with a smartphone, gives access to that information, makes access to that information much more difficult. Safety is a priority and should certainly not be wiped away just by, let's say, a hype digital.
Well, let me bring in Francesco Poggiali from GS1 here, just to remind you that GS1 is an NGO which deals with traceability solutions. So, Francesco, what do you think? Electronic format only information, or can information be adapted in some way so that different people have access to different information? What's your thoughts?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having GS1 today, and thanks for this kind invitation. If I need to answer the question before, I would say both are possible. And today I've been asked to share some best practices where tracing and tracking systems have been developed in order to reach safety goals. And I will be very happy to do it. But just allow me 1 second to say a few words about GS1 for those of you who are not familiar with it. So GS1, as you said, is a not-for-profit, neutral, technologically agnostic standards organization. So we are well known all over the world for the barcode. But over the years, in the last 50 years, the GS1 complex system of standards has been developed in order to be possible, to make it possible to identify locations, products, machines, assets. And you will see in the best practices that we're going to share in a moment how this is really the first point. Everything starts with proper identification. And GS1 standards are open standards, so are not proprietary standards. And I guess this is also part of the discussion on how you really, are able to implement tracking and tracing systems in all different sectors where you have also, for instance, small and medium enterprises. And
sorry to interrupt.
Let me go.
Yes, in terms of electronic format or not, getting back to the question, what's your thought very briefly, and then you're going to talk about best traceability practices.
Yeah, both are possible. So it depends on the sector. It depends on the expectations of consumers. We have seen cases where both, technologically, I can tell you that both are possible. So you can include all the information in a QR code. It can be a data matrix. The carriers are available, and there are different carriers available under open standards. So they are not proprietary, and so consumers can easily have access to this to the information. But I guess one of the big issues is which data attributes you put behind this. So it's not just the way you exchange information, but which data attributes you put inside. And so which group of stakeholders will have access to which information. We have seen very, cases, and this is one of the cases I wanted to show today, where you can have different group of stakeholders having access to different part of the information that have been exchanged. So let me start maybe with one case, because I've been asked to cover identification of small parts, small components inside finished products, because I guess this is one of the issues. It is not just about identification of one single product, but also about the components, because sometimes safety issues are more linked to maybe some chemical substances or maybe to the hazard of the usage. And so sometimes it's not enough to identify the final product, but sometimes authorities and consumers would like to have more access to this specific part of the information. So So there is one best case, which is a European one in this case, but there are, I mean, I'm going to quote other examples because as I told you, GS1 is a global organization, so I have best practices, and please go and check our website because you will find all the cases. But so I wanted to take the example of a bearing, which is a small ring, which is used, for instance, in engines and in the automotive sector, but also in the very sophisticated wind turbine that are very for the green usage and for the green consumers and the green energy. It's so important to have this example as well. So bearings could create issues in terms of safety, and they are really very, very important for the functioning of the whole system, which is very complex, but it goes back to one single bearing. And so it was decided that those bearings should be identified uniquely. And how is it possible? You have heard already Mr. Moon in the previous panel speaking about the global trade identification number. It's a GTIN. It's a code that you apply on every product. In this case, it was serialized in the case that I'm giving you because it was important for maintenance and for safety reasons to go and check the status of that bearing inside a wind turbine without going physically to check where it was, right? Because this can be a little cumbersome. So this information should be available for all operators. So I'm not speaking about only one part of the supply chain, but for all the operators, it was important to know the status of this bearing, sometimes online, sometimes offline, and where it was needed because maybe of other factors that were influencing. And so it was decided that labels were not the right way to identify bearings in this case, because who is going to check a label which is up in a wind turbine? So basically the GTIN was engraved onto the product, but most importantly, the information behind this bearing was exchanged through a thin registry, very thin registry, where you had, some data elements. So, for instance, when it was manufactured, where it was positioned, in which precise wind turbine, in which location. The location was also identified, and all this was really possible thanks to a strict collaboration between all operators. And the information is exchanged through standards which are open, so no proprietary standards, also for the data sharing system. And because this is let me mention this because this is another important part of the discussion. I wanted to go also to another case where, I know we are not speaking about the food sector today, but I wanted to speak a little bit about eggs. Eggs, I guess, are used all over the world. They are very good, very good products. They are considered to be healthy. You can do a lot of things with eggs. And, there are already a lot of safety requirements, although they are different all around the world. And the regulatory gap has been already explained by Pinuccia and by the other speakers. Sometimes this is an issue. But so even in the sector of eggs, it was possible to enhance the track and trace system, even if you have already safety requirements. It was possible for industry to make best practices and best cases. So, for instance, in this example that I wanted to make, it was possible to identify also the farmer's identity with open standards always, and the best before date, the production method. All this was wrapped up in a code, and this code, in this case, is not serialized per each egg, as I made the example for bearing before. In this case, it applied to boxes and to batches of eggs. And so this was another possibility. Then what you serialize is the shipping identifier, because of course, for all logistic purposes, you want to check and have under control all the steps that happen along the supply chain. For instance, if something occurs during the transport, or if the temperature changes when you reach a retail stores and you leave your products outside, or something happens. And so all this is already possible, and it is happening also in eggs. But let me give you one case where authorities were heavily involved, because in those two cases I gave some precedents to industry cases where industry voluntarily decided to raise the bar for traceability higher. So also with authorities, we have excellent cases, and I want to stimulate really a cross-sectoral debate, and I would like to give hope to to all the consumers, because and also to industry that is listening to us and attending this conference, because all these cases are possible in different sectors and are already happening today. It's important to go back to the concept of digital twin, because when products today, products today are physical, of course, as they've always been, but there is a digital twin transition, which is happening in some areas of the world. And you need to make the link between the physical product and the digital twin. And this is happening through standards. And if you use open standards, this is a common language that can be used cross-sectorial. So one example was the fight against illicit trade in Europe, where the European institution led the change. And this is a very sophisticated data systems, and the technology that we use is a little bit more sophisticated than the other cases that I've shown, but actually the results are the same. There are different group of stakeholders who can have access to different data attributes, so the information that they need, maybe because they are regulators, maybe because they are consumers, and maybe because they are national authorities compared to the regional authorities. And so this is all possible, and this is a reality today in Europe, and this has happened thanks to the API system between regional registry and national registries. But the data model that we used in order to fight against illicit trade, to enhance the safety of those products, the data model was discussed in a regulation, and then it became a law in the European Union. And the data elements were already fixed by regulation. So for instance, they included the data, the market of destination, the market of provenance, the market of transit, because for the illicit trade, the transit was also very important. They included, of course, the brand name, the color, the size, the weight, and even the production machine, not just the location, but also really the machine. We identify the machines and the date of the time of the production. And all this is available through just a small code, which is reproduced on every product. In this case, there is a physical QR code on every product. And depending on who you are and you scan this information, you will have access to the right set of information that you need. And if you are a safety authority, for instance, based in one remote area where you don't have online access, well, in this example that I'm giving, also offline information was possible, and to enable market surveillance cases, and to enable market surveillance authorities to do their job offline and online.
Well, Francesca, thank you very much indeed for those three examples, because I think that really shows what is possible in different sectors. Very interesting to hear indeed. So let's get a direct industry voice here from Daniele Sartori from Artsana Kiko, the manufacturer of childcare products. Daniele, so can you give us a sense from a company perspective, the practices and the challenges that you have really in traceability?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, I would like to spend just a few words on the company that I represent today, which is Artsana Group. The company was born in Italy more than 70 years ago with an initial focus on medical products. We are currently the Italian leading company present at global level in the parenting arena. So if we can have a look at the next chart, or the first chart, I would like only to remind that we have a very broad brand portfolio, which covers all of the challenges parenting can bring, with a wide range of baby care products. We can go to the next slide. Okay, here we can see the key figures of the company. Just to say that it's an international company with more than 37 branches and more than 100 distributors all over the world. So traceability is actually a challenge. If you go to the next chart, we can see our broad brand portfolio, which covers all of the challenges parents can bring, I was saying, with a wide range of baby care products, which include, for example, childcare articles, toys, car seats, hygiene products, medical devices, clothing, shoes, cosmetics, and many others. So we can recognize products where recalls from the market happen because of the very vulnerable target of people these products are meant to. So I've been working for more than 20 years in the baby care industry, dealing in particular with product safety, innovation, regulatory compliance, international market access, quality management, after sales, customer service, and more recently, sustainability. So if you go to the next chart and coming to traceability, I was just mentioning product safety, and I think it is self-evident that traceability is of paramount importance when dealing with product safety. We can consider traceability as the navigation system allowing to correctly manage a product recall, for example. So what products, what batches are involved, and the reply comes from the tracing system, giving backward traceability. Where have these products been delivered worldwide? And reply comes from the tracking system, looking forward to downstream users. These two elements are core in the traceability system. So we have to imagine that the maps of this navigation system are built and updated daily in a company throughout data and records which are continuously generated by processes like manufacturing, logistics, sales, just to mention some. So I would just like to focus on three particular elements of any sustainability, of any traceability, system. The system must be fast and reliable. It must allow clear product identification, and it must allow straight communication to involved customers and possibly to consumers. Just a brief comment. To get a fast and reliable system, in Arzana, we invested in IT systems to fully integrate traceability in our ERP. With current complex supply and distribution chains, it is the only way, we believe, to get fast and reliable data when you need it. Second topic I mentioned, it must allow clear product identification, and this is granted through a combined set of information which we place directly on the product when we can, or on its packaging, and always include identification of the brand, the manufacturer, the item reference or SKU, the batch, sometimes also a unique serial number. And we set traceability requirements for each product as a result of product and process risk assessment. In many circumstances, we use barcode technology for this purpose, relying on automation to build robust and consistent databases, allowing fast retrieval of data in case of need. The third and last element that I would like to mention is it must allow customers' identification. The purpose here is being able to quickly inform customers who have received defective products or consumers who are currently using these products. And this is a challenge. Best case, obviously, is when the end user of a recalled product can be directly identified. This is possible, for example, when we sell throughout e-commerce, for example, or when loyalty cards are used during purchase in our own retail shops. Situations enabling direct identification of the end user and allowing direct recall notice. In such circumstances, redemption rate is very high. In most cases, nevertheless, widespread communication is still the common approach in case of a product recall. To do this, since many years, we have opted to have a dedicated page on our website containing all safety alerts on product recalls. And we also use social media to spread communication to proper targets. So probably it can also be said that directly reaching end users of a product is still a challenge today for most consumer goods. And it can also be said that there is still a lack of public awareness on how to find recall information on products. So in this context, having a good traceability system is really a pillar to manage product safety. Building it and maintaining it is complex because it requires efforts and investments. But with this chart that we are seeing, I would like to emphasize the fact that the cold and technical topic of traceability really deals with the primary responsibility of any economic operator, which is to take care of consumers and to protect them through a consistent safety net, ready to be used whenever necessary.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniele. Can I just ask you, I mean, you talked about investments there. How do you get the balance right between investments and the costs involved and the benefits of implementing a good traceability system?
Well, for the cost, we have to remind that implementation costs include, for example, software licenses, hardware infrastructure, process redesign, project implementation. So costs are relevant. A good system on a medium manufacturing plant will cost, if many SKUs are managed, some hundreds of thousands of euros. Benefits, obviously, are for all stakeholders. I can mention two. For example, risk management benefits for all economic operators, because think of a product recall, the ability to trace products forward and backward along the distribution and supply chain in the market is extremely important in the event of a recall. And it can also significantly limit the cost of the recall, because it will limit the recall scope or the amount of products which must be recalled in order to capture all faulty products. So in the end, it is also a benefit of cost reduction. And it also can enhance the level of trust, which has been mentioned before, in the supply chain, in the manufacturer, and on the market. A second area of benefits is obviously dealing with the market, and customers, and consumers. It comes as a direct consequence of the effective and efficient product recall processes, because traceability helps protecting public health, not only in case of recall, it's right to mention, but also because it actually can prevent defective products being placed on the market should an issue along the supply chain be notified to downstream users, thanks to a good traceability system.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Daniele. Let me bring in Tim Lorenz, with the voice really of a small and medium-sized enterprise, Managing Director of RIA, which is, just to remind you, a company that produces safety devices to prevent accidents at home. So, Tim, what's your view on all this from a small company's point of view? Because, you know, if you probably can't invest in the same way that Daniele's company might be able to. What are your challenges?
First of all, let me give a warm welcome to everyone. I'm happy to share with you how we manage traceability at REA. The first slide, please. So we are the German leading company for child safety and one of the oldest players in nursery industry in Europe. We develop and design the products in Germany, and we have a product management and QC team sitting in China, as most of the products are made there. With this and let's say a turnover of 23 million euros, around 300 SKUs and 45 employees, we are representing a typical organization size and setup of SMEs in our industry. In our range, we have a lot of small items and items made from plastic. The average sales value is below 5 euros. So these are a little bit the challenges or the facts out there. And here I would like to share 2 examples with you. Next slide, please. So the first one is a socket cover. The table is showing the elements of physical marking of the different container units along the supply chain. So the product itself, it carries the static marks as our brand logo or a trademark, item number. The address, in this case, is not possible because there's no space, because the product is very small. A barcode is also not given there, but you find the batch code, which is a dynamic mark, meaning it changes for every batch. And it is highlighted here, as you can see. It's showing the month and the year of the production, and it's inserted into the plastic injection tool. So in our warehouse in Germany, we store the products on Euro pallets, and they marked with the pallet label, on which you find most of the relevant information, but no batch code, as there's no value, because you clearly can see the master units, and the master units, which is the one that goes to the retail warehouses. It is marked with the full information, including the batch code. And then you see the inner unit. So one master unit contains X inner units, and this is the one going to the stores, and it has the full information given. So the second product below is a night light. As it is bigger, there is room for the address as well. The rest is the same. I highlighted the dynamic marking, which is in this case a label. So it is put manually, and it's containing all the information. So these physical elements, they need to be linked with the purchase order on one side and the order documents, and on the other side with the sales order. And this is happening in our ERP system. So that's it, generally. So next slide, please. Thanks much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. So you're there. I didn't know where you were. So where do you see the biggest challenges, though, for an SME generally in traceability?
So first of all, it's you need to define your approach of traceability across your individual supply chain and what's workable for all your products and in each container unit. And of course, you also need to allow your organization and the partners involved to the time to digest. So I can tell you that it took around 5 to 6 years in our organization until we reached a level of having marked 100% of all our different items.
Interesting.
Secondly, sorry?
No, carry on.
Okay. So secondly, you need to invest time and money for the implementation of the physical marking, especially the dynamic marks. To put a sticker like what we are doing for the nightlight is the easiest way, but it leads to on-cost in manufacturing, and it's also not very eco-friendly if you have a separate label involved. But regarding technical and commercial aspects, in this case, it's still the best way to do. But given that we would have chosen this way with the label for all our products, it would have created a need of around 10 million stickers per year. So you can imagine that this is not that can't be the right approach. So whenever we have the opportunity of automation, we definitely need to do it, like what we are doing with the socket cover. Like we are making around 4 million pieces of individual socket covers a year. And that's why we invested in new tools, or we modified the tools and had created these date inserts into the tool.
Can I just ask some of the other speakers from the business perspective what traceability information should be available on the product or on a leaflet? So maybe Francesca and Tim could respond to that.
I think both is important, but it's depending on the let's say the person you're addressing this information. For us, in order of let's say recall management, but also complaint management, number or identification on the leaflet or box is not good enough, because this is going to be thrown away from the end consumer anyway. So it needs to be on the product.
Let me bring Daniele in here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what Tim just said. It's important to allow the consumer to identify exactly the product, not necessarily through the packaging or leaflet. And so basic information is reference to the manufacturer, the brand, the SKUs, and possibly the batch. Sometimes we also place a serial number in order to identify the unique sample in the hands of consumer.
And Francesca, I'm just going to ask you a question that's come from a member of the audience. And then I'll also go to Monique with this one. Do speakers think that all traceability information should also appear in online offers when products are being sold via online retailers or platforms? So should the traceability information be available in online offers?
Yeah, it is definitely possible. And sometimes as consumers, when you are in closed environments, for instance, in airports, we have seen good practices where you can really check already in store some traceability information, for instance. It depends. Again, there are different technologies that are available. The most important is that the data elements that are being discussed have been discussed also with consumers, because in some cases consumers can be more concerned about one aspect or for one product, or maybe another aspect for other products. So what my message is that it all starts with identification and proper identification based on standards, and then the data elements can be discussed among the peers, including consumers, those who are needing this information, as well as those who are inputting this information inside maybe a digital twin or maybe a global data model, in order to get access then at the right time in the right way. And technology today supports us.
Okay, thank you. And Monique, I'd just like to get your thoughts on what you've heard generally about what industry is doing and whether that works from a consumer perspective, and also this question about whether online platforms should have traceability information.
First, I would like to react, if possible, to what Daniele said about the cost of having strong traceability investments, and I liked very much the response, because it's not really a cost; it's a long-term investment in consumer trust, and it's also shown that if you have prevention or if you have measures in place that can be really activated very quickly, it costs less than a scandal. So it's the cost of doing nothing. It's really a very short-termist approach. Yes, I think that there is, as Francesca just said, there is really technology is on the side of making it easier for the whole system, for the whole supply chain to provide this information to consumers. But what I would really like to stress also for online sales, we believe that platforms should know who are the sellers on their marketplaces. They should be able to identify the sellers, and consumers, once they are in the possession of the products, need to have the information, making it possible to identify. I mean, to have this identification, be the batch number or serial number, and the contact address of the producer, so that they can turn to somebody. And what is also something very important is it's not only the supply chain that needs to have all this information. Consumers also need to have this information on the product or on the leaflet, let's say, because there are people who have a product that has been revealed as dangerous. They have it already in their home, and they must be able to identify that product. Do I have that product of that series that has been just recalled? And therefore, it's really important to be as close to the customer, to the end consumer as possible when you provide that type of information.
Can I just ask you and maybe a couple of other speakers, and then also our audience, this whole business of one up, one down traceability that works in the toy industry, in the cosmetics industry, it's in certain sectors where an economic operator has to be able to, if asked, communicate who supplied them with the product and to which economic operator they are supplying. So it's that one up, one down. Should we expand this to all products or to other sectors? What do you think about that, Monique? And maybe we could open the poll on that for should we have a one up, one down traceability requirement for all consumer products? So let's get the Slido poll open while I ask our speakers. So Monique first.
Well, our concern with that is, I mean, if you have a chain and the chain is broken in the middle of it because somebody is not doing their job properly, the whole system is failing. And we are quite concerned that then there will be no backup solution for the whole system. So it is not really, if you really generalize it, we think it lacks the safety net function that consumers would deserve.
What would you say, Daniele, working in the sector that you're working in?
Well, we are in favor of this kind of solution. It's the only way you can really build the traceability that you need.
So would you, what you say, this to all sectors, you should have this one up, one down rule?
Yeah, it's a legal principle of keeping forward and backward one-step traceability.
And Francesca?
And then you can choose, then you can choose how deep you want to keep traceability, because you can go further and more and do more than that. But at least the one step forward and backward should be kept.
Oh, yeah.
And Francesca, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, surely, and I fully agree, at least one step. But I show you a case before where we discussed about farmers' identification. You know, it was one of the cases I was trying to refer. And it's important because you can go up until the very first step. You can include raw materials today. Of course, this demands cooperation and transparency and good collaboration. But we already have best practices in this for safety reasons. So I guess safety is really the goal that we all want to achieve, and so it makes sense to go up to the farmers' level if it is needed and if it is meaningful for the sector.
At the moment, I think that in the toy sector, the information, the businesses are obliged to keep this information for 10 years in the toy sector and 3 years for cosmetics. And so if this requirement was introduced to all consumer products, how many years do you think business should be obliged to keep this information for? and I'm going to ask the audience the same question with a Slido poll in a moment. But I mean, do you have a thought on that, Francesca? Sort of just how?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just conscious about green ICT elements that are also, they need to be taken into consideration. I mean, I leave it to regulators, I leave it to industry, of course, and to the consumers as well to strike the balance. Does it make sense to keep huge and heavy and energy-consuming sophisticated technology just to maybe check it once? You know, it depends. There are other systems like having light registries where the basic elements are needed, and then through new digital link, you can go and search the information that is needed directly from brand owners' websites. We have heard from some of the speakers that they have already included this information in their websites, and the digital revolution has happened in many companies already. And so maybe this is a new way, but it's a new frontier. I'll be happy to discuss more maybe in other fora.
Let me open that Slido poll then. The question is that if we have the one up, one down requirement for all consumer products, if we can open that poll, for how many years do you think businesses should be obliged to keep such information? So it's 10 years at the moment for toys, 3 years for cosmetics, and we've given you a choice of literally 1, 2 through to 10 and beyond. How long you think? Does anyone else on the panel have any further views on this whole idea of one up, one down? Tim, do you have any thoughts?
I completely agree with what Daniele said. So.
Okay. So how are we going on this poll? For some reason, 7 years seems to it's going like this all the time. So it's how long should we actually keep the information? And 10 years it's quite a substantial length of time. 39% of people are saying 10 years. Monique, what are your thoughts?
I mean, if the objective is to make it easier to keep people safe if there is an incident with a product, of course, the risk of having an incident is higher in the earlier years of that product. But there is plenty of evidence that sometimes it takes quite some time before the dangerous character of a product has been identified and demonstrated. So I would say certainly for durable products that should not be too short a period, because you need to be able to retrace the products after for quite some time after they have been put on the market.
So let's have a look. It's 38% of people say 10 years, and then we've got a sort of, and 32% say 5 years. So a significant amount of time you think that the information should be kept. So that's interesting. We heard Francesca talking before about the whole business of components and actually being able to trace the components. And I'm just interested to know what other people think about that, how important it is to have traceability requirements regarding the components of a product. Daniele, what would you say?
Well, I mentioned the fact that we decide and we determine during the product development process and the manufacturing process design what components deserve traceability and what is the depth inside the product to keep track of what components, what raw material batches are used in which batches of finished product and so on. So it is something that should come from the knowledge and know-how and competence of the manufacturer, who knows his own supply chain, knows the product, knows the risks and the hazards that may be coming with the use of the product and so on. So it is not a unique answer that can be given, but for sure components should be tracked.
So let's open the Slido word cloud. In which cases would it be necessary to have traceability requirements regarding the components of a product? Let's open that Slido now while I ask somebody else. Tim Lorenz, which case, do you see specific cases where that's really important to know about the actual components?
First of all, I completely agree again with what Daniele was saying. So when it comes to our range of products, we're also identifying the relevant products and try to go down as much as possible in marking also the components. Like looking at the socket cover, It's made from 6 different pieces. The most important one is made from steel, and it's so small that you can't mark it. So unfortunately, there is no option. But we try, to trace it down as much as possible.
I mean,
but it's very individually depending on the product and the use of the product.
Of course, Francesco, you gave the wonderful example of the wind turbines, but do you see certain sectors where this is more important than others?
Well, yes,
So, Francesco, if you'd like to take that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, of course, there are products where the usage and the exposure is closer to consumers. And so sometimes, without naming specifically some of the products, I guess some of the sectors that are closer to the consumers in the way you use those products, for instance, detergents or cosmetics, or authorities have classified hazardous chemical substances already. And so it would be a pity to leave this information like this, because we have a lot of scientific data and scientific reports that also industry is willing to use. And so there are ways in order to find, again, a win-win situation for all, where, this information can be more accessible to consumers through the products that they use. It's different, of course, if you use a cosmetic product on your skin all day long. And so it's important that you are informed about maybe even a small percentage of one chemical product or one chemical substance, while maybe you have a product that you use from time to time, and maybe you don't need this information. Again, it's as Daniele said, there is no one recipe for all, but today it is possible to do it through a common language and through standards. So these are my last contribution. Thanks.
So I think I misled you, because I said this was going to be a word poll, but in fact the question was, should there be additional traceability requirements for components of products? And 75% of people say yes, and 25% of people say no. So just to...
Can I maybe say something to this?
On this? Of course.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's important. I can't see everybody, you see, so I can't see whether you're putting your hands up. Please, please.
I try, but I know it's blind. Of course, the general consumer perspective is it's the responsibility of the producer of the whole product to check the components. But there are those two developments of more durable products and repairable products, where consumers might have much more access to the components. So the question about having this traceability of components has also now a new consumer dimension, because as a little bit like Francesca will say, there will be more and more access to the components, because people will be able to repair themselves or have repaired by third parties. That means that there is maybe a more granular information and traceability that needs to be built up, or at least reflected on in the coming years. Thank you.
Great. Well, no, that's important to say. And so just to really, we're coming to the end of the session, and I'm going to ask Pinuccia to do a little summing up in a moment. But really, just to finish off in 30 seconds each, if I could ask you what you think is really a priority element for product traceability to get right. What, if you had a magic wand, what is the most important thing? So maybe we can stay with our panellists before we hear from Pinuccia. So what would you think about that, Francesco? If there's just one thing that stands out, the most important thing in this whole world of getting traceability improved, if you like.
Yeah, thank you. I guess all starts with identification, and identification based on a common language that can allow data to be used for public purposes and for the goals that industry also wants to reach towards their own consumers. It's to enable trust, really. So I guess the first step is identification, and we see that it's going better and better. Identification for many years was only a question for the supply chain, but today it's really very, very important for all stakeholders.
And Daniele?
I would say risk-based approach to design the system and transparency.
Thank you. Tim?
To me, the dynamic marking of each individual product is the most important thing.
And Monique, from the consumer's point of view?
Well, I agree with what has been said before, and I would say there is an urgent need to upgrade the traceability of products that are sold online.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you all for going through. So a bit of a whistle-stop session where we were asking lots of different questions, but we got a lot of information from different perspectives, and so that was very nice. Pinuccia, you have thoughts, no doubt. Do let us know them.
So I think I will put together the conclusion of this panel with the general conclusion of the day, because we are almost at the end of our session, and I think we really worked a lot. As we said after the end of the first panel, hard work, hard work, hard work, be it in crisis times or for traceability reasons. So on this specific panel, I would say that there were principles that, in a sense, reinforced what was said during the first panel: the need of cooperation, the need to find IT solutions to problems, sometimes new problems, sometimes old problems. But in particular, what I think was extremely useful, and I won't tell you how many ideas I have already about what we could do in the revision of the General Product Safety Directive, was, first of all, the link that was made by our Chinese guest with academic research. I think we don't speak enough about this, but certainly academia could help us a lot in finding the fit-for-purpose, sustainable, technological, easy and consumer-friendly solutions that then you talked a lot about by giving a lot of examples too. So I think there is possibly a missing or to be explored link with academia. Sustainability definitely came up very, very strongly. Transparency too. And that's really very, very important, because maybe too often when we talk about traceability, we only think about the obligation and cost side of things, but there are also important democratic values enshrined there that go farther than market logics. Transparency is very, very important in our societies. So it's very, very good if we can, in a sense, embed it also in product safety. And then, of course, you gave a series of very, very interesting best practices, and I'm sure we will want to learn more about all this. I'm also proud to see that we had NGOs, we had SMEs, we had bigger businesses discussing this in a very cooperative and constructive way, because I think this is the way forward. This is the way that can make us all work better for the safety of consumers. And there I go back to our introduction with the keynote speech of the Commissioner, where he explained what his priorities are for the next 4 or 5 years, that will be very soon adopted by the Commission with the new consumer agenda. We're all looking forward to it. As you know, all the activities, initiatives, the work we are doing in the Commission for product safety is enshrined in this new strategy that we will be presented very soon. And certainly has been also, in a sense, made more complete by the consequences of the crisis, where we are still fighting with so many unknown problems before this, with so many new products that sometimes are also dangerous, and so we need to do more. So what I would say is that fundamentally, we are all here with our goodwill, each of us in our roles, to make all this advance. From what I've heard and what I've seen today, I can definitely say that we can advance, because I see a lot of good ideas, a lot of good things already being done on field. I know that you are working so hard in all your capacities to advance this. So let's say that the hero's journey continues tomorrow. I will let Kathy give you a sneak preview of our agenda for tomorrow. But as a last word, I wanted to tell you that the number of registered experts to follow our International Product Safety Week has gone up to 510. And let's not forget that because of the crisis and because of the virtual setting of all this, we are talking about an International Product Safety Week, but in reality, this is the last week in a month of international and globally very, very significant events dealing with product safety. We have had the ICFSO International Symposium end of October, followed by the UNCTAD session on competition and consumer protection. And then we have had the OECD groups dealing with consumers and product safety that gathered together last week. And now here, this week, we are trying to bring all of this together so that all of us, we can come out of this week with clear ideas of what we can do more and better together. Thank you very, very much.
Panuccia, thank you very much indeed. The problem with virtual events is that you would normally be applauding, we'd be applauding our panelists at this moment, but all I can say is thank you very much indeed, because it was just really great to sort of hear your voice. Well, we could do still, couldn't we? We can do it, and just in our few little people, but the people all over the world will now be applauding. So well done, and thank you very much indeed. Yes, so tomorrow we are talking about product recalls, and we've got some really, really interesting best practice examples coming from different parts of the world. So I think there's going to be some really nice discussions. That starts at 1300 CET, Central European Time, so whatever time that is where you are watching. So the end of the first day now, if you want to network, remember you can do that via the platform. You can contact people directly. Some of you will already have made one-to-one or dates, if you like, with people. I hope, well, I won't go there. I don't mean a date. I mean a networking session. And so it will be a chance just to exchange some thoughts and views. So do join us again tomorrow when we will have lots more to talk about. So in the meantime, have a very good rest of the day. Bye-bye.